Scripture for the message is Luke 21, verses 1 through 19. Jesus looked up and he saw the rich putting their gifts into the offering box. He saw a poor widow put in 2 small copper coins. He said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of them, for they all contributed out of their abundance. But she, out of her poverty, put all that she had to live on." Now while some were speaking of the temple, how it was adorned with noble stones and offerings, he said, "As for these things that you see, the days will come when there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." They asked him, "Teacher, when will these things be? What will be the sign when these things are about to take place?" He said, "See that you're not led astray. Many will come using my name, saying, 'I'm he,' and 'the time is at hand.' Do not go after them. When you hear of wars and tumults, do not be terrified. These things must first take place. The end will not be at once." He then said to them, "Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, and in various places famines and pestilences. There will be terrors and great signs from heaven. But before all of this, they will lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to synagogues and prisons. You'll be brought before kings and governors for my name's sake. This will be your opportunity to bear witness. Settle it, therefore, in your minds, not to meditate beforehand how to answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which none of your adversaries will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be delivered up even by parents and brothers and relatives and friends. Some of you they'll put to death. You'll be hated by all for my name's sake, but not a hair of your head will perish. By your endurance, you will gain your lives." May God add his blessing to the reading of his word. Have you ever heard of an unrecognized gift? We're not talking about a gift that's not accepted, but one that's not even recognized to be a gift in any way. Spiritually speaking, this is what Jesus is to the world, an unrecognized gift. In 2 Corinthians, when Paul was taking an offering for famine relief among the people in modern-day Turkey and for the ones down in the Jerusalem area where the famine was, he calls Jesus God's gift to show why it is that we should share for others that are in need. To be a disciple of Jesus isn't just about giving in these times of need, but it's with our whole lives to be a witness that Jesus is God's gift to the world. That's what our text lifts up for us, where it starts with the famous episode of the widow's mite, it's often called. Jesus is in the temple. He's watching people put money. They're casting coins into this big box of the treasury there at the temple. And there were many larger donations, but one woman's gift would have been completely unrecognized if Jesus hadn't been there. It didn't make much noise. We have our noisy bucket. Well, these coins were so small, they're the smallest of all coins. They didn't make much noise when they hit the treasury compared to what other people were putting in. She had 2 of the smallest coins, so we could say like pennies today, to put in. Yet Jesus says she gave more than everybody else because they gave out of their abundance, but this was all the money she had. This is all she had to live on, was these 2 small coins, and she puts them in the offering. Why did she do that? I think the Father sent her to come and give at that time. And again, nobody else would have recognized it, I think, except Jesus himself. Because this woman's gift is a witness that Jesus gives all of his living, all of his life, not just money, but his very life for everyone else. He's willing to offer everything to God for the sake of helping the world. Like the widow, people don't recognize Jesus' gift, though, even though it's for them. And we can see that the immediate people around Jesus didn't understand this, because they start talking about the temple that they're in. And they would be gold and silver, maybe overlaid on things. It'd be precious stones put in, and even the stone itself was cut in a way that was very ornate and fancy. And so everybody's talking about the adornments to the temple. And so Jesus, and here he's just talked about the widow's offering being so much better than these bigger offerings. But they didn't understand that, so he has to say the day is coming when all of this outward beauty is going to be completely gone. And they ask, when? And what sign will there be right before this is going to happen? Now, his answer would have sounded roundabout to them in many ways, because most of what's answering when is going to come in our text next week. At first, he just starts off saying, many people are going to come using my name and say, I'm he, I'm the Christ. The time has drawn near. It's the end of the world. Do not go after them. Many so-called signs of the end are not signs of the end of the world at all. Wars, insurrections, large conflicts, earthquakes, famine, disease. None of that is a sign of the end of the world. But during that turmoil, when those things are occurring, Jesus says, you, the disciples, will be persecuted. And yet, instead of this being some horrible thing, you're being persecuted, he says, this is leading you into a witness. This is an opportunity for witness that's presented to you. So don't think about what you're saying. You don't have to defend yourself. I will give you a mouth and wisdom. They will be sharing Jesus, the gift of Jesus, with the rest of the world. He says even the hatred of others can't stop this witness. It can't spiritually destroy them. In your endurance, you will acquire your souls. And so, not just Jesus, but his disciples' life, as they share Jesus, is also an unrecognized gift. They're turned over by even family members. They're brought before kings and governors. They're thrown into prison. And yet all of that is a witness to the very people that are doing those bad things. Their life becomes a witness. Our lives are also a gift, an unrecognized gift to the world, as long as we share Jesus with the rest of the world. Let's hear an example from a woman named Barbara Todd that experienced a time of adversity, but found out it was indeed an opportunity for witnessing both to her about Jesus and by her to others about Jesus. Barbara had an emergency surgery one month, and this was quite a few years back. Her husband had taken a new job a month before that emergency surgery that, was completely unexpected. And back then, there was a 90-day wait before your health insurance would start with your new job, to make sure you'd stay with the company or whatever. And so his insurance didn't kick in yet. She was a part-time preschool teacher, so she had no insurance. And also she had no income during the month in which she had to recover from this surgery. So they're worried about the bills that are going to be coming from this surgery. But even though those hadn't arrived yet, she said things were getting desperate. Our cupboards were bare, which our 3 young teenagers didn't appreciate, but they understood. Yet we continued to pray and trust in God. There was a particular time between husbands' paychecks when their bank account had been squeezed dry. So they kind of swallowed their pride and decided to talk to his parents, who weren't rich either, but they loaned them $50. So Barbara made a list of the most needed groceries, and they decided after church on Sunday, we'll go to the grocery store and pick up these items. Well, that Sunday, there was a guest came. There was a children's choir from Africa. These were orphans that AIDS epidemic had hit a lot of Africa, and so a lot of parents and older children had died, and there was a lot of younger children left there as orphans. And there were ministries that gathered those children, put them in orphanages, and now sent some of them around as choir around to America to get donations for things. And so she said not only did they sing for us, but they told these heartbreaking stories of losing parents and siblings. And then the adults that were with them said they were raising funds for these orphans' education, and yet there were so many more orphans, they needed to build more orphanages. And so Barbara and her husband looked at one another, and they gave $20 out of that 50 to the orphans. Barbara said, I got that list out of my purse and I started crossing off various items so that we could get down to $30 worth of groceries instead of 50. Well, later that afternoon, after the church was over, they went to the store, they were back home. A close friend called and asked if she could stop by for a few minutes. She brought in a grocery bag that she said someone gave her and wanted to be anonymous, but wanted her to give it because she knew she was a close friend of Barbara's. Barbara starts taking items out of the grocery bag, and it turns out it's the very things that she crossed off that list. She felt so moved by that, she started telling her friend about how they had got loaned this 50 and they were going to go to the grocery store, and yet she had to cross these items off because they wanted to give money to the African children. And that made the friend remember, oh yes, somebody else gave me an envelope to give you. And she gave Barbara the envelope. She opened it up. There was $20 inside. We were all in tears at this point, she said, thanking the Lord for the miracle of the unexpected provision. And yet there was still some dread because of these medical bills that were going to come. And in fact, the next day, the hospital bill came. Barbara was wondering, should I wait for my husband to come home or not? No, she was too curious. She opens up the bill and was shocked. And there at the bottom, it said, paid in full. And a note that an anonymous donor, wishes to remain so, and yet has paid all of this bill. And in fact, every bill that had anything to do with that emergency surgery all had that same note, paid in full by someone who wishes to remain anonymous. I've come to trust, Barbara said, that God provides in His way and in His time. A time of adversity, yes, but it was an opportunity for witness. A witness by Barbara's family to the African orphans, and an opportunity for others in the congregation to witness to her family. To all lift up the fact that there's this unrecognized gift of Jesus that's going on all around us. And it's sacrificial giving that gives a sign of Jesus being that gift. Just like the widow in Jesus' account in the text, and in what happened in Barbara's family, what they experienced. So it's not wars and earthquakes and famines, but it's sacrificial giving that gives us the sign that Jesus is God's true gift. May we share that gift with others and indeed be witnesses of Jesus to the world around us.